Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to crumble!
I'm Joshua Kemble, and welcome to Joshua Kemble's Livestream. I've been a freelance illustrator and graphic designer for over 20 years. I was an art director for 9 years. And when I'm not art directing and working on illustrations and graphic designs, I'm working on comic books and graphic novels, and that's usually what I do during my streams. And while conversations can go all over the place on this stream, from spicy and entertaining to goofy and silly, one thing stays consistent throughout every stream. I'll always be working on art. So pull up a chair, get your art supplies out, and get ready for an entertaining show that'll keep you company while you work on your own personal art projects. This is Joshua Kemble's Art Stream. Hey guys, this is me, Joshua Kemble. I'm going to be working on comics today. We're streaming for the second time today, and this one will be probably about an hour. I'm going to stream for about an hour, try to finish the shading for the last panel on page 95 of Not Death But Love, The Strange Supernatural Story of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. I had accidentally skipped page 95 and finished 96, so when we're done with this page, we'll have 96 pages done of the graphic novel, which is pretty cool. Not the highest page count compared to people like Paul Pate, who are just like, I think he's working like 156 or something ridiculous. But I feel good about it. So we're going to stream for a little bit, try to finish that shading. I'm going to show off another one of my guitars. I've just been doing this like at the beginning of streams. So I've been showing sequentially the guitars that I got, play them for a little bit, and then we get into working on comics. So far I've shown you guys the Squire 2, which was like Stratocaster, which was my first like real guitar. I showed you guys the Jasmine, which was my first acoustic guitar that I got after that. And it was like, both of those are really cheap guitars. And then I showed you guys the Squire Telecaster, which was the first new guitar I had really bought. I guess the Jasmine was new too. And now it's like 30 years old or something. But now I'm going to show you guys my next acoustic guitar that I got. So my wife and I moved to Portland, Oregon. I had this whole time in my life where I stopped playing guitar for a really long time. Partially just to focus on art. And so I'd do art and then I'd noodle around on guitar on the side. And I remember when we moved to Oregon, I really missed playing guitar. And I was noticing I hadn't really fixed up my Jasmine yet at that point. So I was like, this acoustic is not good. And I don't really gig a lot, so I don't need an electric. But maybe I could get like a decent acoustic guitar. And so for the first time ever, I went and got a mid-range guitar. So generally people define like a high-end guitar is usually a guitar that's going to cost you. Now, don't get me wrong. You can get guitars that cost like next to nothing and are great guitars. But in general, like guitar people kind of view anything as like 1,000 or above as like a kind of standard range instrument. Mid-range is usually like in the 400 to like 600 or 700 realm. And then, cheap guitars or budget guitars are usually anything from like $0 to like $400 or something. So this was the first like mid-range acoustic I owned, first mid-range guitar I bought. And I ended up picking up a Seagull on the recommendation of a lot of guitarists that I knew. This is a great guitar. It's the first time I owned a guitar that had a solid top. I'm pretty sure Seagulls still have laminate sides and backing, but they have a solid wood top, which means it's a solid piece of wood. They're handcrafted in Canada. These are amazing instruments. I think they're made by Godin, I believe. But they're just incredible acoustic guitars. They're machines. They have this lovely little headstock with a Seagull on it. And so this guitar has been my primary really good acoustic for years. It's a very lovely guitar, and I love it very much. I recorded all of my solo project, the Joshua Kemble project. The Bottle of Better Than was all recorded on this guitar. Um, and uh, and yeah, I just love this thing. I haven't gigged much with this, but it's definitely seen a lot of playing. Just this has been my go-to nice guitar. The nice thing about the Jasmine though is like that it's such a cheap guitar. That's the one I usually leave outside of its case and just kind of hanging around for me if I have ideas. This one is a nice enough guitar to where I usually keep it in its case, and I pull it out when I need a good guitar. But it's a beautiful guitar. It has wonderful fretwork, and just great sustain, and I love this guitar. Okay. So anyhow, the nice thing about a Seagull 2 is, it's a dreadnought. I think this is, what do they make this with? I can't even remember the woods. I should know the woods, but it's a good guitar. So we're gonna play something real quick on this, and then we'll get to working on comics, um, for like the next hour or so. Okay, so I have the capo on the 5th fret, so we're playing it a little higher. Capo is this little thing, um, but this has boom and tone. Like, so if you compare it with the acoustic, the Jasmine that I was playing, which has gotten better with age and stuff. This I picked up in, that was probably like 2000 something, 2008 or something like that. So there's just a little messing around on it. I love this guitar. It's an incredible guitar. I know that they use like cherry wood. It's all Canadian woods that they use for this. It's called the Seagull S6. This is a great kind of first real acoustic guitar. And they're beautiful. The woods are all sourced from Canada as well. Um, and this has served me well for, well over 2 decades as a guitar. I believe I picked it up. I think it was like 2000, probably about 2008 that I got this. So again, like it's I wasn't buying guitars all the time, but I love this guitar. I still do, and it's got a tone that's really incredible. It's a good player. Anyhow, it just chimes and rings out. I don't know how much of that you guys can hear, but it's this is a good one. And the nice thing about this guitar, this is the first mid-range guitar that I ever owned. And unlike guitars that I had owned prior, even that Jasmine, like I had to replace the tuners. I had to like really like mess with the truss rod to kind of get the neck realigned, that kind of stuff. This guitar I've never had to make like any adjustments to. It's just been a workhorse. It's very well built. The bracing on the inside is incredible. It's X bracing with like scalloped inside. And just the build of it, the build quality of these guitars is incredible. And you can still get them at a pretty decent value. Like if you picked one of these up used, I bought mine new, but if you pick one of these up used, I think you can usually get them for like a couple $100, which is kind of insane. New, they're usually like 5 to 6. At least that's what they used to be. So yeah, I love everything about this guitar. It's definitely seen a lot of playing to the point where, the nice thing about when you own a guitar for a while, you can see little almost like dents that you put in the like in this case on the rosewood fretboard. But they're really great guitars. I love them. I recommend Seagull guitars, especially if you're a starting guitarist who really needs a decent little workhorse of a guitar. So yeah, this was guitar number 4 at this point. I think we're at. So this thing, I did see some gigs and stuff like that, but not a ton. But definitely has been like the primary like recording and songwriting guitar that I've had for well over 20 years, and I love it. And kind of I said this with the Jasmine, and I will say this with this guitar as well. The nice thing about acoustic guitars is as they age, if you take care of them, as they age, they start to kind of develop a better and better sound. And so this, just like the Jasmine, has only sounded better every year. And I love it, and I still think it's a great guitar. Great action, like nice low action on it. Just I don't know, they're really incredibly built. The construction on it's really beautiful. I love the woodworking that they do on their guitars. You can tell they put a lot of care and love into every little detail. Even the inlays on the side are really nicely done. They're like little wood inlays, and they have this wonderful like look of the wood on wood for the headstock front, which I think is really classy. So yeah, this has been a really good, beautiful guitar. You've definitely heard this if you've heard my solo stuff, because this was my primary workhorse. I think I recorded most of the Bottle of Better Than on this, and so you guys have probably seen this before. But yeah, as I've been going through my guitars sequentially, that would be guitar number 4. So I'm doing this also just kind of out, to run through like the different guitars and the different things they offer. So for me, like the reason I like the Jasmine is it's like a junker guitar that sounds pretty good, but it's a guitar that I can have. Like if I'm sitting on the couch, I don't feel like nervous carrying it or whatever. If it gets destroyed, it's not like a huge loss. But I love that guitar, but I'm like attached to it. But it's good to have one of those, like a little songwriter kind of floating around. And then this I like because it just offers this really full body, really strong mids and brights. But it, as you guys will notice, like when I talk about other guitars, like the other acoustic that I recently got, and then the one that's showing up pretty soon, we'll see what that has to offer for the palette. But this is really just a good, like, overall tone guitar. It's not going to be as bright as the Hummingbird, but it offers like a really good tone. It's just a good solid acoustic guitar. And again, that was the first like real like much like the Squire Telecaster felt like the first time I bought like a new electric guitar. This was the first like real guitar I bought. Like, you know, this is like a gigging player's guitar, like, you know. So anyhow, that is guitar number 4, and now we're gonna stop talking about guitar stuff, and we're gonna get into working. And at this point, we'll probably work and try to finish up this panel, and then again, I'll probably do another time off stream and then back on when we're working on comics. So I hope you guys are glad to work on comics with me. Let's do this. So we have to finish this last panel and the shading on it. And then I think what I'll do is at that point get Ben to bed and you know, his bath, all that stuff. And then once he's, you know, ready to go, then we'll start streaming it again to kind of finish up the colors of this. So I'm going to call this layer shading because I hadn't labeled it yet. And then we're going to continue building this out. Hopefully that's interesting to you guys. Let me know in the comments too if you guys are watching these and you're like, man, this guitar thing is really boring. I think it's interesting going through like different tools and what they offer. And yeah, the nice thing is, like when I play this guitar that I was talking about, it brings something different out of me than the Jasmine. The Jasmine I'll play a lot harder because it's just not as well, like it doesn't have as much resonance. And so it's like on this guitar, I started learning things that you can do a lot more subtly on an acoustic, that on a bad acoustic, you just have to like slam the strings so loud to get any projection, so hard to get any projection from your guitar that you're not going to get the same kind of things from a guitar like this that's really well built and has a lot of resonance, so that when you hit like a harmonic, it's going to ring. And I just really adore that about this guitar. So yeah. Then there's going to be, the next ones will be fun and kind of interesting to go through. So what else do we have here? Well, we just basically, all we have to do now is just establish the shading for this last panel. And there's quite a bit going on in the foreground, which should kind of make this interesting. So what we were talking about on the last, toward the end of the last stream, was over philosophizing can be a problem. Like, or overthinking or over being overly critical. And that's a hard thing to, you know, I remember a while ago I was on Beautiful Voyager, the podcast, talking about like mental health stuff. And a lot of the thing that ties a lot of people who struggle with mental health issues, including myself, one of the things that is a struggle for a lot of people who, you know, suffer from like depression or anxiety or anything like that is overthinking. Like, just most people I know who have like issues with mental health stuff, we overthink things. You know, it's hard to be just present and just kind of enjoy as things are. So we're going to get as far as we can by like 6 o'clock. And then again, my hope is to finish up this panel, the shading on it. But we're going to go till about 6 or 6:10 at the latest. And then I will have to go do the kid bathing duties, which isn't too hard. It's not as complicated as it used to be. Let's see here. When your kids are young, it's like you have to, like, bath time is like a whole thing. Whereas, like, you know, as they get a little older, it's like you just kind of fill the tub and make sure they got what they need, and they're pretty much good to go. You're good to go. There is some interesting kind of smudges that are on the top here, and I'm not quite sure what caused those, but we need to get rid of those. So I don't like that extra smudging. Okay, so now we're drawing Elizabeth again, just kind of shading this. I'm again making the light source kind of from the top right. I find that if I have to have like a default light source, that tends to be my go-to. It's like top right, kind of like almost imagining it in the sky a little bit. Yeah, it's fun to start these streams off with a little bit of guitar playing and showing you guys the I don't know, just sharing that like tale of how I acquired different guitars is really interesting to me. I also like that about instruments in general. I think there's a bit of that with art too, where you know, like a good example is like I have a bunch of art tools that I really like using, but there's one that I kind of popularized with a lot of my friends that hardly any of us had heard of, but I found in my dad's garage like years ago. And my dad used to be he was in school to be an architect, and so he had an architect's ruler. And I had never heard of this thing, but it was like a rolling ruler with like a metal track on it. And so I remember using it, and then it got misplaced, and I was really bummed. And for about a year and a half, I tried to find replacements at like art stores, and all their rolling rulers were awful. And finally, I just looked it up on Amazon, searched around, and then I was trying to remember like why did my dad have this ruler? And then I was like, I bet it's an architect's ruler. So then I looked up architect's ruler, and suddenly that ruler just showed up. And there's an interesting story behind it, because it's like, to me that's interesting, because it's like you're not just getting a tool or whatever. The way you acquired it or learned about it can be a really interesting thing to think back on, because whenever I use that thing, I kind of think about my dad and think, like feel a little connected with him and his work process. Speaking of work processes, we're gonna play a trailer really quick, and then we'll get right back to work. So here is, um, let's do the Jacob's apartment trailer. Clearly it seems that only in dreams can we be these things we've seen and walk around breathing I don't know the part to play in this heart of mine. There's dissonant things, they split at the seams. All right, we're back and ready to rock. So, yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I'd love to hear stories about how people like kind of come across different tools or supplies, or sometimes it's really interesting to hear, like you'll have had an instructor or something that like recommended a certain tool, and then you try it and you're like, wow, this is like a game changer. Those are always just really interesting moments to me. So I think because of that, I think hopefully like somebody will find it interesting to hear about like the different guitars and the story kind of behind them. Okay. And I think I didn't mention this about the Seagull that I was showing at the top, but so when we had moved to Portland, that's like the first time in a long time where I actually started playing guitar again. Um, and it was nice to have that reawakened a little bit, like an interest in just strumming around on a guitar, occasionally writing things. That was just a really nice moment of kind of remembering, like, oh yeah, I actually like playing guitar. Okay. So these are really strange dresses. I don't particularly like the way that I've executed these shadows on her face. I think they're just too like blotchy. So I'm gonna go ahead and rework those a little bit. We can go back to this initial layer. I think I'm gonna start from go because I'm not really happy with how blotchy and kind of weird that looks. So let's see if we can do it a little better. Like I didn't mind my selections. I just think I went a little too blobby with it. I kind of didn't even mind. I think that actually works quite a bit better. Yeah, that's looking a million times better. All right. So the other day, instead of working on comics, I ended up going to see Lord of the Rings, the Return of the King on the big screen. My mom actually called and was like, "Hey, do you want to go see this?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's go." So it was kind of a neat way to like hang out with my mom and stuff, but at the same time, um, man, I had forgotten how good those movies are. I mean, I did. It's like I didn't forget. It's just they're so good that whenever you watch them, it's I don't know. It's one of those ones, At least to me, whenever I watch that series, it's like I don't get caught up in any moment where I like lose the fun of it. I tend to like just get fully engrossed in the movie every time. Every time I watch those since they've been released. It's just such a I don't know. It's like one of those beautiful kind of windows of time where I feel like everything kind of aligned. Um, the director was right, the casting was right, the team that did all the costumes and effects and stuff was correct. It's like everything was just on point to where those movies are just incredible. They're an incredible experience. But I hadn't seen it in years, and I kind of like it kind of reminds me of like my friend Josh, who I do music with, who has my same name. um, he called me a couple, like, I don't know, it was like half a year ago. And it was like, dude, we need to go see Postal Service and Death Cab. They're playing together. And I'm like, sweet, let's do it. He's like, yeah, it's the 20th um, anniversary of Give Up and Transatlanticism, which are like, albums of both bands. And it's like, wow, it's been 20 years. That's insane. It was one of those moments of just like, it doesn't feel like it's been 20 years since those came out. I mean, thinking about it, yeah, I guess it has been 20 years. So Lord of the Rings, same thing, where, I guess why they were back in the theaters is it's like the you know, 20-year anniversary or whatever of that movie. And I'm like, was it really 20 years? That's crazy. But then I think about it, it makes sense, but I will say it's still better than like 90% of the films that like it still holds up. I think it's incredible. A really pretty amazing job they did on that thing. All right. We have the shadow being cast here. I want it to get a little darker. And then we'll kind of continue to work our way through. So yeah, anyhow, it was just really fun to watch those again and remember what an incredible series of movies that is. I feel like sometimes, I wonder if people felt this way, because I was kind of born into Star Wars. Like when I was born was like the year, Return of the Jedi came out. So it's like, to me, it wasn't really a series that I would see in the theater until like the prequels, but it's like, I never had that moment of like seeing Star Wars on the big screen. And I wonder, I think for the people who were alive and saw it on the big screen, it's like you almost didn't know at the time you were seeing something so iconic that's going to hold up and become this like great thing. And I feel like Lord of the Rings, I think, was just one of those movies that like all the stars aligned, and it was just a really great film and a great film series. And so like living through the era in time, when we could go see every single one that came out, there was like anticipation of the sequels and stuff like that. It's like you almost forget for a moment, when you're living in that time or whatever, you forget for a moment that this is like a rare thing. Like there isn't always there isn't always going to be like some just incredible feat of filmmaking and storytelling and everything, like there was in that movie. So now keep in mind, I also was a weird kid, and like I grew up on Lord of the Rings. Like my, mom and dad were like super obsessed with The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings books. And so I had read those books and stuff. I think I've told this story on stream before, but I remember I have a vivid memory of reading the first Lord of the Rings book, like the Fellowship, and and I was reading it in a cafeteria in junior high. I was like really into science fiction and fantasy books back then, and I was reading it at the cafeteria at my school, and then Gandalf dies, and like I had no idea that he would, return after he died. And so I remember just like being really upset and sad. And a couple friends of mine, in junior high were like, "What's wrong, man?" And I'm like, "Gandalf's dead. Gandalf the wizard." And they're like, "You are such a nerd, man." Like, they had no idea what Gandalf was or like any of that stuff. So, like, when you tried to describe at this era in time, I tried to describe like the plot and stuff like that, and like people were just like, that is so weird. Like I'm like, no, you don't understand, there's like this hobbit, and like and they're like, yeah, I don't know. So it's been interesting in my lifetime to see that change where like now if you made a reference to Lord of the Rings, it's like everybody knows Lord of the Rings. Like if you don't know, Lord of the Rings, like what rock have you been living under, Um but yeah, anyhow, that was a funny memory of that. But anyhow, it was neat to see. Neat to see. It's rare for me, especially now. Because one thing that's changed since having a kid is I like long and slow story builds a lot, like I always have. But I have to admit, like as a parent, I don't know. I do feel like my patience is a little slower. Like it's hard for me to sit still and watch a movie that's like a long movie, and not feel like I need to be doing something. And um, and I guess I've always had that, but not to this extent. Like I don't know. I've just noticed that my attention span has decreased. Is all I'm saying since becoming a parent. But what I guess why I'm bringing that up is like this was like the full uncut edition in a movie theater. It's like 4 and something hours, like 4 hours and 25 minutes or something. And there was no point during the entire thing where I felt like, oh man, I'm tired or anything like that. Like I just lost myself in the film again and was like, that's amazing. Like that to me, that's really amazing that it can be an uncut film and you don't get bored, or I didn't get bored or antsy or, whatever. It was just, when it ended, I was like, I want it to continue. It's such a fun world. Yeah, it's anyhow. So that's me ranting about, Lord of the Rings, but it was fun. It was one of those things where I was supposed to comic that night, and I'm kind of glad I didn't. Um, Glad a family member kind of convinced me to not work all night that night because it was pretty cool. Um, Really neat to see. Okay, so we're getting closer to the time where I have to get the bath and stuff set up for my kid. So we may not be able to finish the shading on this panel until later tonight. So I'm gonna go till about 6:10, and we'll see how far we can get. But I'm guessing I'm probably just gonna have enough time to shade Sophie and Elizabeth here. So we are getting there, guys. We're getting comics done. We're getting comics done like madmen from like insane invaders from outer space. The persistence of invaders from outer space. There's a kind of mustachy thing going on here that I want to take care of. Almost looks like Elizabeth has a mustache there. And that's not what we want. We don't want a mustached Elizabeth. I think that works a little better. Okay. So I'm trying to think of other examples. Like I was talking about this on the last stream. Are there other examples of like animals doing art in nature, like making art? Because I now know that pufferfish do mandalas or mandalas. So it makes me wonder. I know there's geometric patterns that some spiders use for their webs, but I think that has more to do with like structural integrity. The weird thing about the pufferfish thing is like it it doesn't seem to serve any purpose other than just alluring a mate. You know, it's kind of like the equivalent of like a peacock feather or something, but for the fish, who's just like, check out my cool patterned mandala. Which is interesting. The fact that it's not like part of their camouflage or anything like that. Like to me, that seems really unique. But I'm wondering if there's other examples in nature where that happens. So if you're listening and you know of like some other example in nature where an animal like crafts a like a little art piece and the animal's not like trained to do this by like people, um that would be really fun to hear. So we're making some good progress on this panel so far. It's definitely one of those days where I've been able to get a lot done, but it's like, and I think this is one of the things that's key with like making these things is, um, the trick is, at least for me, has been, I never actually have time to do these. Like, I never have time to do these. So what you do instead is like just make time when you can, and then you just kind of roll with it. So like in this case, I mean, I got some stuff I got to do in about 10 minutes. And it's good stuff to do. It's like, I got a kid. I got to take care of the kid. He's a good kid. But it's like, so I can just squeeze in like getting in as far as I can on this before then. And then after the fact, just because I'm going to have to like stop at some point doesn't negate it. And I guess I'm only saying that because sometimes my brain will mess with me, or I'll psych myself out by being like, oh, now I can't work on this thing. Like I probably shouldn't start, because if I start, then I'm just going to have to stop. And it's like, no, I mean, like you still get work done by like kind of carving away. And it's amazing how quickly that can add up. It really does create like exponential growth in a comic, like in the creation of a comic. Because the thing is, even if you only have like 10 minutes today or 20 minutes to like work on something, you're 20 minutes further than you were the other day, right? And then the next day, if you do 20 minutes, now you're 40 minutes further than you would have been if you hadn't taken those 20 minutes, right? So it can kind of like sneak up and add up pretty fast. But it can also be a really hard habit to build, because as artists, we all have our weird habits, and sometimes it's like, oh, I need to be in total isolation when I work, or like we have weird things that we do that sometimes we kind of feel are necessary for the process to get like the muse going. And I think sometimes, I think a lot of times, uh, we might be using those rituals or that need that we think we have as like an excuse to kind of um, not do what we need to do. Let's see here. Okay, we did finish Elizabeth and Sophia or Sophie. Uh, there's something weird about her mouth that I still haven't quite gotten right. I think I'm going to put her cast a little more in shadow, but I don't want her to look splotchy. The chin now looks a little too blobby to me. That kind of works. That's working a little better. Okay. So we got about 10 minutes left, guys. So I think what I'm going to do is the shadow underneath them. And then maybe, just maybe, we'll have time to get to that figure right next to them. It's like a Victorian tea party. And once we kind of end this stream, I'll probably be back around 9 to go for another hour or so. So we'll see. My hope was to get the shading and the color done tonight. We'll just have to see how quickly that goes. And I mentioned it on my last stream. There's a couple things that I'm going to need to do pretty soon. Like I need to do roughs, need to do a logo, and I need to do pitch pages as well. So those are all things that I need to do once I'm done with this thing. Luckily, it is Saturday tomorrow, so there should be a lot of time. I hope you guys have some awesome plans for the weekends. I believe I mentioned this on the last stream or whatever, but there's a Yamaha Red Label Nippon Gaikai that I ended up getting. It's a guitar made in the 70s, and it's an FG75, and that should be arriving anytime soon. I'm very eager to see what condition it's in, because it is an order from a thrift shop. And I don't know if you guys ever played the game Pickup Sticks back in the day, but I definitely need to have a wild round of pickup sticks with my son. He has never played pickup sticks. And I need to teach him pickup sticks because it's a good game. We might have to play a little bit of there's a Minecraft game that he got. It's like a card game, but it's amazing. Where you're kind of reminds me of Settlers of Catan. Which actually reminds me, we should teach my kids Settlers of Catan. That's one of my favorite games of all time. Problem is that game takes like a day. Like that is a commitment, that game. All right. Let's see here. We got about 5 minutes left. See how far we can get. Kind of want this. Okay. We're getting a little further for this Victorian historical fiction graphic novel. We got about 4 minutes to go. In 4 minutes, I will be hopping off to get all the bedtime stuff done for my son. And then I'll probably be back on, I'm thinking around 9-ish, to kind of see how much progress we can make on this. Again, ideally, I would like to have this colored by the end of the night. Shaded and colored. Ready to go. We will see if that plays out. I think I might have time, just enough time to finish this lady. So the nice thing about this too is once I'm done with this, I am caught up on my drawings for this. And so the next phase for this story after this page is done will be to work on the next chunk of roughs. So we're making some pretty good progress here. And also we'll be able to get a little further in the story and translate the script a little more. It's always fun when you get a little further into the story. Okay, so 2 minutes-ish. So I think we can do this chair. And maybe the cast shadow under the lady, and then that might be it for the live stream tonight. Till about 9. Cool. So we're gonna disappear in about a minute. Just gonna finish this chair and the cast shadow under it. I wanted to say thanks to anybody who's tuned in. I know these ones I've been doing today are a little short, but trying to live stream more often when I am working, because I feel like that's something I lost. I lost track of doing for a while, and it was really easy to fall into a pattern of not doing it. So I'm going to be trying to, whenever I'm working, within reason, to be live streaming, because why not? And so I'm going to make an effort to do that. But let me know if these are okay with you, if I do these little short ones. If you prefer the longer hangouts, the like 6-hour streams and stuff like that. Or if you prefer to just have like me do this when I'm able, because I really do want to provide more content for you guys a little more often. And also I appreciate hanging out while working on this stuff. Dee Dee said, it looks like you need lady fan references. Nice. How you doing, Dee Dee? Hopefully well. I hope you had good holidays and a good new year. So I think that's going to catch us up for now. So I'll see you guys on the next live stream, which will probably be around 9:00 p.m. tonight. Thanks to those of you who tuned in. I'm gonna go bathe my kid, so I'll be back around 9 p.m. So make sure you're subscribed to this channel and you've hit like. Definitely make sure you hit that like button and hit the bell so you get notifications when I hop on. And hopefully we can all work on art together tonight. So we're getting there. This page will be finished, and I will see you guys around 9:00 when we go to finish it. Thanks to everybody who's tuned in, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.